In this presentation, we will discuss preparing the online application. In part 1 of this series, we discussed the Entree application system for prospective new sponsors. In this section, we will discuss the online application in the CMP website for both returning sponsors and prospective new sponsors who have completed the Entree system. This is a screenshot of the Child Nutrition Program or CMP website. Prior to the start of each program year, sponsor users will log into the CMP website to complete and submit their SFSP online applications for approval. Additionally, throughout program operations, as revisions are needed to applications and as claims for reimbursement will need to be filed, the website will be accessed. To gain access to the CMP website, you will need a valid email address, a user ID and password, an internet connection, and a web browser. Our website does not function or format correctly if you are using a web browser other than Internet Explorer. Version 8.0 and up work best. Some SFSP organizations report problems accessing the website, such as unable to complete a claim, perform online form revisions, or select from drop-downs. If using the correct web browser, Internet Explorer, and this problem still persists, it may be due to the compatibility view feature. This is how you fix the compatibility view issues. Using Internet Explorer, log into the CMP website and then follow these steps. Hit the Alt button on your keyboard at the same time as the letter T. Select Compatibility View Settings from the drop-down list. 3. Add Louisiana.gov to the websites you've added to Compatibility View list. Close the dialog box. And lastly, if logged out of CMP, log back in and the issue should be fixed. The CMP website provides sponsors with access to the following SFSP features: the sponsor application, which contains the program budget, facility or site applications, one per site, monthly claims for reimbursement, a sample media release form, which will auto-populate and customize after submission of your forms, and a health inspection form, which will also auto-populate and customize after submission of forms. After logging into the CMP website, you will see a gray Home tab and a purple Summer Feeding tab to the right of the screen. Click on Summer Feeding to begin the online application process. When sponsor users access the SFSP online application for the first time in a given program year, they will be directed to the Requirements feature on the website. Once completed, this feature will not need to be repeated until the next year's application is open. These are the following actions required. 1. Your CMP Permanent Agreement Acknowledgement. 2. SFSP Agreement. 3. SAMGOV Verification. And 4. CN Data Sharing Agreement. The head of the organization and authorized reps are provided with rights by LDOE to complete these phases. Step 1. Access or click on the CMP Permanent Agreement Acknowledgement. Acceptance of this document requires an authorized representative of the sponsor to read and understand the agreement document below, to use the form to accept the agreement, and to type in "I agree" in the acceptance box. Once the CMP agreement has been read or understood, the user will type in "I agree," followed by his or her login ID and password used to access the CMP website. Then click Submit. You can also click to view or save the document. Once the sponsor user accepts, the following will display. Click on Back to Requirements list to proceed. Second, we have the SFSP Agreements requirement. Again, you will read and understand the agreement below, type in "I agree" in the acceptance box, and enter your username and password and press the Submit button. The sponsor user will read all attestation language listed in this section and then will enter the requested information at the bottom of the screen and submit. Once the sponsor user accepts, the following will display. Click on Back to Requirements list to proceed. Step 3. Complete the SAMGOV verification requirement. The sponsor user will enter the organization's DUNS number under this section and then will click Submit. Once the sponsor user submits the DUNS number, the following will display. Click on Back to Requirements list to proceed. Maintaining a current and active SAM registration is a requirement for program participation. Please be sure to provide the DUNS or SAM number that are associated with your organization's name. Step 4 is to access the CN Data Sharing Agreement requirement. This has been newly added to our website. The sponsor will read all language listed in the section, then will enter the requested information at the bottom of the screen and submit to indicate acceptance. Once the sponsor user enters and submits the required information, the following will display. Click on Back to Requirements list to proceed. Once all 4 requirements have been completed, the sponsor may proceed to the completion of the sponsor level and facility or site level applications. Please note that the requirements portion of the website need only be completed one time per program year. First, we will discuss the sponsor application. After completion of the requirements feature, sponsor users may proceed to the sponsor level application. This application is 5 pages in length. Some information contained in this application pre-populates and cannot be adjusted by the sponsoring organization. Address details as well as the parish of the sponsor are auto-populated. Additionally, please note that some areas contained in the sponsor application cannot be completed until the facility applications have been completed. Examples include, on page 1, your program's start date, end date, and total operating days are auto-populated only after your facility applications are completed. Again, on page 5, your budget details cannot be completed until your ADP has been entered in the facility level applications. The sponsor application. We have our sponsor contact. This is the main point of contact for the program. Our sponsor type, which is auto-selected based on the application materials. We have our meal service, where you will select the appropriate category for the organization. Other CMPs, select any or all programs that the sponsoring organization may also participate in, such as CACFP at-risk supper, school food service, such as NSLP or SBP. Year-round service, provide an appropriate response. Prior serious deficiency notice, again provide an appropriate response. Record collection and maintenance. Please provide the centralized address where all SFSP documentation will be maintained and the frequency in which it will be turned in. Note that this is the location the review team will report to for any SFSP reviews being conducted. This slide shows which information has to be directly entered by the user and which information is auto-populated. You'll see in the top left-hand corner the sponsor will input that information as well as general program information. However, the address of the site and the operating dates will self-populate after the facility calendar has been built. On page 2 of the application, the sponsor will provide the last financial period that has ended for the organization, as well as indicate whether the organization expended greater than $750,000 in federal funds in that time frame. The sponsor will need to select all parishes where the SFSP sites will be in operation. Note that failure to select all parishes in which the SFSP will operate will cause the sponsor to be unable to establish area eligibility in some or all of the facility applications. Additionally, please note that if you are a returning sponsor that will operate in the same parishes as in the prior summer, those parishes will already be selected or rolled over in the new year application. The sponsor will need to select all parishes where the SFSP sites will be in operation. This is a screenshot of that. All sites must receive a first week visit and a first 4-week review by the program monitor or monitors unless waiver approval has been generated. As previously mentioned, the state agency will ensure that training of staff has occurred prior to the start of the program. On page 4, you will be able to enter all SFSP administrative staff that will work with the program, including both volunteers and paid staff. The user will key in each individual's first and last name, job title, number of hours he or she will work daily, the number of days of employment for the current SFSP, and salary information if applicable, along with the funding source. You will then click Add. The same process will be used until all administrative staff have been added. Please note that if the Add button does not work on this screen, it is likely a compatibility view issue. The staff member listed as the person who oversees the program on page 1 must also appear in the staffing section on page 4. This person must be able to work all days of the program or have a designated staff member listed who will fill in for this role on the days when he or she will be absent. All sponsors must designate one or more program monitors in their sponsor staffing plan. All central office workers, such as bookkeepers, monitors, program directors, or area managers, must be listed in the sponsor staffing plan. This includes both paid and volunteer staff. Page 5 captures the anticipated sponsor-wide program reimbursement, the program budget, plans for expending any remaining SFSP funds, and SFSP advance requests. On page 5, you will see your estimated or anticipated reimbursement. This is auto-populated based off of your facility applications. Next, you will build your annual program budget. This cannot be completed until facility applications are finalized. You cannot exceed the anticipated program reimbursement with your budget. SFSP funding may only be utilized for allowable program expenses. Next, you will be asked what you will do if any excess funds are left over from your program. You must enter an acceptable use of funds. Advance request. Sponsors may opt out of this option by leaving this area unchecked or may place a check mark next to the selection indicating, I would like to request in advance, as well as the months that you are requesting in advance for. Please be reminded that the total anticipated reimbursement does not equal the reimbursement that will be received in the current year operations. This is an estimate. Budgeted line item amounts will roll over from the previous year application. It's the sponsor's responsibility to review these items and update as needed. Allowable expenses may become unallowable expenses if not properly documented or accounted for in the current year SFSP budget. Advances must be repaid by the sponsoring organization. LDOE Appropriation Control will remove the amount of the advance from the first claim for reimbursement prior to issuing payment to the sponsor. All advance requests must be made in the sponsor's initial application. Now to the facility applications. One facility application is to be submitted for approval per proposed feeding location. Each facility application contains 4 pages. Like page 1 of the sponsor application, some information pre-populates and cannot be adjusted by the sponsor user. Each site's name and address is pre-populated. When users access the facility application link on the left-hand SFSP toolbar, sites will display as shown above. No application reflects a facility application that has not been accessed by the sponsor for the current year. Unsubmitted reflects a facility application that has been started but not yet submitted by the sponsor for the current year. In this instance, the sponsor does not intend to utilize this site in summer 2020. The sponsor option to ignore former sites that have not operated in the current SFSP. In this instance, the SFSP organization has decided that it will only host a program at the ZZZ Donald Duck site this year. Therefore, the sponsor has decided to ignore the second site displayed. The sponsor moved this site down to the ignored sites list by selecting Ignore in the Actions column next to the site and then by clicking Go. Once the site has been ignored, it moves down to the bottom portion of the screen to allow for sponsors to navigate through the active sites or the sites that they wish to complete applications for. Note that if an application were ignored in error, the option does exist to unignore the site. Over the next few slides, we will demonstrate the process of completing a facility-level application. In this example, the user will complete an application for the ZZZ Elementary School. To complete an application for ZZZ Elementary School site, the sponsor will select Start in the drop-down Actions column and then click Go. For each participating facility, the sponsor would enter or select the site supervisor details, the site type, and establish area eligibility if applicable for the site in use, indication of whether the site is located in a rural or non-rural setting. Please contact the state agency if you need assistance in making these determinations. On page 1 of the facility application, step 1 is to select the site type from the drop-down. Step 2 is to assign the area eligibility if applicable or report enrollment or eligibility data. When establishing the site type and associating area eligibility as applicable, the user will need to click the gray Change Area Eligibility button to select a site in the attendance zone of the SFSP facility for which the application is being completed. In step 3, you will select a school site in the list that is in close proximity to the site in which the application is being completed. Once the chosen site or school has been selected, the user's school selection will display on page 1 of the facility application. At this point, area eligibility has been established. Page 1 of the facility application also requires the user to designate the site's demographic makeup as either rural or non-rural. State staff confirm that the correct designation has been made for the site based on the designation via USDA's Rural Designation Tool. Below is a link to the tool for assistance in determining rural versus non-rural status of a site. The sponsor will select the following: meal preparation used, other CMPs at the site, applicable site activities, and the most recent health inspection dates completed. Please note that if your SFSP site is a school site that normally participates in the NSLP SBP, this information should pre-populate in from the SFS site health inspections area of the website. Please ensure that you are making the correct selection for each facility application, as there are 6 meal preparation options provided that users may select. Self-preparation on-site, sponsor preparation at a central kitchen facility, sponsor preparation at a school food service facility, agreement with an SFA, a food service management company. This is where the site utilizes an FSMC for prepared food and meals, and the SFMC site staff provides the food service. There's always an agreement between the sponsor and the SFMC. There's also vended meals, where the site receives prepared food and meals from a different organization, but the site staff provides the food service. Please be reminded that if meals are not prepared on site, you need to provide the name, the address, the city, state, and zip of the location where the meals were prepared. Page 2 of the facility application. On this page, the sponsor will inform the state agency of the meal service types, for instance, breakfast, lunch, snack, or supper, to be offered at each proposed site. A calendar will be built to reflect the operating days and the number of children that the site anticipates feeding each day per meal type. Please note that the sponsor does not start page 2 here on the calendar builder. To add a meal service option, click the Add New Meal drop-down located near the bottom of page 2 and select the appropriate meal type. Then click Add. Once a meal type has been added, the user must edit the entry to add start and end times for the meal service and the number of children anticipated to participate as the ADP. Then click Update. Complete the same process again if wishing to add a second meal service option at the site. This screenshot displays both meal types to be offered at the site. Note that the operating days do not yet appear. After the meal types have been assigned, the calendar will need to be completed. To do so, complete the Calendar Builder feature in the upper right-hand side of the page by selecting the days of the week the site will serve meals and the start and end date of the program using the format month, date, date. Then click Build Calendar. To reflect closures at the site due to holidays, click Edit above each calendar and then manually click on the day you wish to remove. The date should change from green to white shading. Then click Update. Repeat the same steps for the second meal service if applicable. For instance, in this example, the site is not operating on Friday, July the 3rd. On page 2, please note that the information has pre-populated at the top of page 2 now that the calendars have been completed. This information will also populate over into the sponsor application in the estimated or anticipated reimbursement section on page 5. Here's a recap of the steps for the Calendar Builder feature. Number 1, select the appropriate meal types in Add New Meal dropdown. Then click the Add button. Once the appropriate meal type has been added, indicate the beginning and ending times for that meal type along with the ADP, or average daily participation. Please be reminded that this is the cap for the number of meals you will be able to claim at that site for any given meal. Click the Update button to the right of this information. Perform steps 1 through 4 again if wishing to add a second meal service type. At the top of the page, under the Calendar Builder, place a check mark next to the days that the site will operate and enter the beginning and ending date for the operation and click the Build Calendar button. The format required for the dates is month and day. Remember that without USDA approval of an Offer versus Serve waiver, only SFAs have the option of offering Offer versus Serve with the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Meal Pattern. However, if the state agency receives a statewide OVS waiver for summer 2020, as done in summer 19, sponsors of all types will be able to request the use of Offer versus Serve via page 3 of each facility level application. Please be sure to clearly convey the Offer versus Serve indication to all site level staff. This is a frequent finding on reviews. Please note, congregate feeding is required at all sites, including outdoor sites, unless previous notification has been provided to the state agency, as in when the site is going on a field trip. The same process is followed for the site staff or staffing information section as for administrative staffing information section on the sponsor application. A site supervisor must be designated along with all staff assisting at the site. The staffing information entered here, once saved, will automatically calculate if paid with SFSP funding sources and populate into the sponsor budget. You also have the option to indicate an other funding source, which will not calculate into your budget. Once staffing has been completed for all facility apps, the sponsor can finalize page 5 of the sponsor application, check applications for accuracy, and submit for approval. Here are some important reminders. Save your work often as you progress with applications. Save each page. If an error message displays on any given page of the application, despite all data being entered, be sure to click Save once more. This should eliminate any outstanding errors. Enter sponsor comments on any page of the sponsor and/or facility applications as needed to provide clarification to the state agency. If anything changes during the program, such as staff replacement, program length changes, more children are participating, this must be updated in the online application and resubmitted for approval. A program may not begin until approval has been received.